Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of what is the Arsenal News Show. Join you every morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing well. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me. It is very much appreciated. I hope you've had a fantastic start to your week. And we're back in the usual surroundings, which hopefully means no silly connectivity problems. I can't promise that it's always going to be perfect, but what I can promise, hopefully, is a strong internet connection, far more than what we've been used to over the last fair few days. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in over the course of the weekend, and I hope you've appreciated the work that's gone into continuing the show every morning, despite the fact that I was indeed still on holiday. So yes, thank you. Everyone joining us in the chat box, thank you so much for doing so. Paul, good morning to you, to Johnny, to Dave, to Martin, good morning to Amira, to Black Shine, to Rob, to The Process, good morning to Barry, to Darren, to Matt G, to Lars, to Jalali, Legend, Sabre, Phil, Vivian, Stephen, Sandman, Junior, Stevie, PJ, and plenty more of you guys joining us as well. Very much appreciated. Thank you to everybody for making us a part, as I always say, of your morning routines. If you could drop a like, if you could subscribe, I would really genuinely appreciate it. Right, without further ado, we're going to jump into today's stories. However, I would like to kick off today's show on more of a somber tone. You know, over the past couple of weeks, we've learned about some obviously horrific acts of violence, and sadly, yesterday the game between Belgium and Sweden had to be abandoned because of a terror attack in Brussels, which sadly saw the loss of the lives of a couple of Swedish football fans. And you know, no one should go to a game of football and not return, it's really sad. So certainly our thoughts are with those that are affected by all of the recent conflicts and sad passings that we've seen over the past couple of weeks, which obviously has seen yesterday that footballing related incident happen, which is very, very sad indeed. But I wanted to kick off the show with what is obviously a really important thing to talk about. Moving into Arsenal's topics, Gabriel has been speaking whilst away on international duty. He says on the prospect of facing Uruguay, and of course talking about Arsenal and Brazil as well, he says, I know that everything is in God's time. Last year we lost the title, we were sad, but this season we've started well, winning a title already, talking about the Community Shield there. I'm certainly happy about my first goal in the Selakau shirt. It's a dream for me and my family to be here. I'm very happy with what I'm experiencing. We know their quality, Uruguay, are players who have played at a very high level, but we have to be prepared for what lies ahead. I'm at Arsenal and I always come up against great players. That's no problem. I've played against Darwin Nunez. We know his quality, but he's got a clear head. It's going to be a tough game, but we've prepared. So Brazil will, of course, face Uruguay in the next game of their World Cup qualifying group, and there is an expectation that we'll see that we'll see Brazil start Gabriel Magalhaes. She seemingly has really kind of grabbed that centre half position in all of its, I was going to say glory. I don't know, glory is the right word, but certainly all of his quality that he's had and shown. He's certainly been able to display that, which is obviously really good for him. Ben White's contract talks are ongoing still. For those that were wondering what the latest on Ben White is, and that they are ongoing, and that they are. Oh, the TGT sneezes back. That they are indeed ongoing, but positive talks are underway, and that there is hope that a new renewal will indeed be signed and ready at some stage in the near future. Ben White's very happy at Arsenal. He wants to stay at Arsenal, and Arsenal want to keep him at the club, even though he's got a contract that is still going for another 3 years. Arsenal want to future-proof their team and make sure that contracts really aren't up for discussion, to be honest, at any point. And so as soon as they can renew and extend those deals, they're looking to do that, which is, of course, another really positive aspect of Arsenal's future planning. Kayode, who is a Fiorentina fullback that's been linked with the club. There was, a clause in his deal basically at the time that he was available for quite a low amount of money, and his wages were significantly low as well, that would make a move to a club like Arsenal, hence why we were linked to him quite easy. He has signed a brand new deal with Fiorentina, meaning that if indeed Arsenal wanted to make a move for the fullback, they would have to pay a higher fee and obviously a higher wage than perhaps they would have been planning to. But we did talk about this player in the past, and so therefore I thought it important to bring up the fact that he has indeed signed a brand new contract. Speaking of transfers and sticking with them just for a second, one of our headline transfer stories of the day, according to Fabrizio Romano, Arsenal are still said to be interested in Douglas Luiz. He said, speaking to Court Offside, Arsenal have been monitoring Pedro Neto for some time, and I can also say that Arsenal have always kept monitoring the same players they like, such as Aston Villa's Douglas Luiz. He remains one of them. He's always been appreciated. Of course, we know that Arsenal had bids rejected for Luiz in September of 2022, and he later went on to sign a new deal with Villa, which runs until 2026. He's now a key player for Villa, so the deal would not be an easy one, but many clubs appreciate him. Whether or not I think that Douglas Luiz has got to become a better player since we last signed him, I think that he has improved, and he's improved under Unai Emery as well. I just don't know whether or not that he's the right player to Arsenal to sign in central midfield. I've always thought if he was going to play in this team, it would be playing slightly ahead of the number 6. I didn't think number 6 was his best position. So I never saw him as kind of a player that would hold on to a defensive midfield role. I thought it would be Rice kind of sitting and then Luiz on the slight left and slightly ahead of him. But I think there are better options. Yusuf Fofana, I think for me is a better option for Arsenal to go for than Douglas Luiz. But interesting to see if this interest becomes anything more than just that. But let's wait and see what happens. And our headline story of the day I wanted to discuss is that yesterday, whilst I was travelling back from Suffolk, was able to scroll through social media a little bit. And what I did see was a lot of Chelsea supporters debating whether or not that they should be booing Kai Havertz when Arsenal, of course, visit Stamford Bridge on Saturday. Bear in mind that this is the player that won them the Champions League with a massive goal against Manchester City. He's gone to Arsenal after being, let's face it, underappreciated and underused and undervalued and misused by the Blues. Yes, he has moved. I know that some Arsenal fans don't like Cesc Fabregas for moving to Chelsea, and certainly when Cesc Fabregas returned to Arsenal, there were boos. So it's not like there isn't hypocrisy if anybody that was happy to boo Cesc Fabregas is not happy to see Kai Havertz booed by Chelsea's fans. What I would say is that I was never one of those fans. I find booing a little bit petty, to be honest. Like it's just not anything that I'm really that engaged with. But we know that, of course, it does happen. And Arsenal fans, for some reason, found it, fine to boo Cesc Fabregas, despite the success that he, of course, had during his time with us. And of course, the fact that Arsenal rejected the idea of re-signing Fabregas when Arsene Wenger had already signed Mesut Ozil. So it wasn't even down to Fabregas. He would have been very open to returning to Arsenal, it seems, but the door was not open. But with Kai Havertz, a player that has won them a Champions League and now has moved to Arsenal, and for a significant fee as well. He didn't necessarily push for the move at all. He was kind of forced out in some ways. It was very different. Cesc kind of forced the move to Barcelona, whereas Havertz was kind of surplus to requirements under Pochettino, and Arsenal decided that he wasn't going to be that at Arsenal and that he'd be a very useful asset to the club. So very interesting. I'm intrigued to see if Chelsea do indeed boo Havertz on Saturday. I hope that it's used as something of a motivation, if anything, for him. So yeah, let's wait and see. Let's wait and see what happens on Saturday. Right, let's move to part 2 then, and your questions and thoughts in the chat box right after this. Okay, let's jump into the chat. Red Star says, Tom, have you seen El Neni's interview? I don't understand how some fans want him gone so bad. He's one of my favourite players. Sadly, I haven't seen and read it in full detail. I know that Simon Collins of the Evening Standard spoke to El Neni, and I saw that his interview in the Evening Standard was published as well, which is, I think when it comes to a player like Mohamed El Neni, he's obviously, I think, an asset to the team. He's a really, really strong, likable character, and certainly one that I think will be of a benefit to Arsenal to keep around the squad. And he plans on, I think, kind of remaining. He says, it was one of the happiest days of my life when asked about signing that brand new deal. The way they spoke to me, the way the entire club was happy about this decision, they made me cry this day. Arsenal Football Club, they know I love them 100% so much. They know I don't want to leave. I want to stay and finish my career there 100%. And I was injured and my contract was finishing and I could not play anymore last season. And they came straight away after I got injured the next day and said, Mo, what sort of contract will it have to be? We love you here and we want you to stay. Really, this club is great, which is, absolutely fantastic. And he also spoke about El Neni FC and spoke about the fact that, he started up his own under-10 side. He's been doing his coaching badges with Arsenal. I think it's a great idea. He says, I'm thinking about football all the time because I know we have had older players before who have finished their careers and they don't know what to do after. It is much better to think about now because then when you finish, you have something already built. And the idea started from that because we want to stay in England, but I cannot just stay in England without work after retiring. I cannot just stay at home doing nothing. And that's why I was thinking what business I can do. I cannot open restaurants because of my passion is football from day one, which is great. I think it's fantastic. I was always on the idea of, I was always certainly in the corner of El Neni staying, and because it was an obvious thing for us to do. There was no downside to him staying at the club. I think that he offers Arsenal good performances, consistent performances, just level solid 6 or higher out of 10. I can't remember a bad performance from El Neni ever, to be honest. I'm sure maybe there were, but certainly they don't stand out in my mind. I don't ever remember one. So, yeah, certainly El Neni is a player that I look forward to hopefully seeing thrive when his career finishes, but also continue to do good things while he remains a playing member of staff. Amira says fans would rather have 2 players of different ilk in one position, but Mikel Antonio in his podcast said managers might prefer them to be similar, so tactics and rotation is easier for the team. What are your thoughts? I think that certainly Antonio makes a fair point with this. Think about why Nketiah and Jesus are our options at centre forward. They're both stylistically, rather physiologically quite similar in their smaller, slighter stance and stature. But there is differences between them still. Jesus is a lot more collaborative, whereas Nketiah we think about as much of a 6-yard box finisher. So I think there's truth and there's also debating points against that from Antonio. But some managers certainly I think will like having similar players and some will like having different options. And I think by bringing in Kai Havertz, we have given ourselves a different option at centre forward as well. John says, I expect them to boo when he scores a screamer to break his open play goal duck. But if we want them to run through walls for the badge, we have to show them something in return. And John adds, that's crazy regarding the El Neni hate. The renewal was good for the club to show the team that Arsenal will take care of you. And we always criticise players for being mercenaries, indeed. And certainly El Neni doesn't fall into that category. El Neni has been great for Arsenal, and that contract extension was never something to criticise. It was just something to go, you know what, that's really classy from Arsenal. It's not going to cost them, what's the word I'm looking for? An impactual amount of money that's going to show up on the books anyway negatively and stop Arsenal from signing anybody. We still signed Declan Rice, we still signed Kai Havertz, we still signed Timber, we still signed Raya. It wasn't like it affected anything that we wanted to do. And he's a really important part of the squad. And it's important to have those types of characters within the group as well. Lynn says, Tom, can you explain to me why the Spurs manager has been given manager of the month 2 months on the bounce when someone like Mikel is poles apart? I understand why he got manager of the month in August. That makes sense. But I think if Arsenal continue to go on unbeaten in October, we can expect Mikel Arteta to, of course, get that Manager of the Month award after beating Manchester City. But they would need to then beat Chelsea. We've then got games against Sheffield United this month as well. We've got a Carabao Cup game against West Ham United as well. We've got Newcastle, but that's in November, actually. So the Carabao Cup game is also in November. So we've only got 2 games. I imagine if Arsenal are able to beat Chelsea and beat Sheffield United, you'll very comfortably see Arteta get that award. But regarding kind of the results from the last month as well, Arsenal beat Bournemouth, they drew with Spurs, they beat Everton, which they hadn't done in a long time, and they beat Manchester United. You could argue that they had a very strong month, Arsenal, but I guess that Ange coming to Arsenal and securing a 2-2 draw was more of a higher appreciated result than what Arsenal have done, which, is down to opinion. Anna Simos says, what about Kefren Turam or Manu Kone? There are other players, of course, that Arsenal should be interested in for sure. And certainly I wouldn't be against the idea of Arsenal bringing in either of those two players. Jeho says, Tom, what do you think about us going for Calvin Phillips next summer? I don't feel too good about that, mate. To be honest, I think that Arsenal would be better off trying to sign a player that was more up and coming rather than a project player like Havertz that needs more of a renewal and a revival about their career. Mark says, Tom, I'd like your thoughts on Andre at Fluminense and whether the interest in him is serious. For me, he's as good as Guimaraes. Well, Mark, you clearly have seen plenty more of the player than I have. Now, yesterday, of course, I spoke about one of our listeners that had been giving some information about Fluminense, and I didn't give them the credit of their name. So Charlie Millen, thank you so much for the comments on the other show. But also, Charlie left some thoughts on Andre in our comment section, so I'll read you to them now. Andre, he says, Andre went from being the best young player in Brazil in 2021 to being the best defensive midfielder in Brazil in 2022. And now in 2023, he's the best DM in America, and he's getting his first minutes in the Seleção. I assume that's maybe South America, or maybe even South and North America. He's my favourite Zerin graduate since Marcelo. He's always captained youth sides, usually averages more than 90% passing, has amazing recoveries and tackles. Only thing missing from him is his game is a slightly cooler head. He spent 2 years with Felipe Melo now, and his shooting. He sorts those out, and he's up there with the best DMs in the world. So high praise there from Charlie regarding Andre. It's certainly not a player that I can comment on and say, oh, yeah, absolutely, Arsenal should be going for him, because I've analysed his play. But certainly if these links continue towards January, you can be sure that a tactical breakdown we will indeed be covering. So maybe we'll have to get Charlie on the channel to have a chat about Andre. But certainly, Temi, a tactical analysis and a breakdown on Andre will be done closer to the January window should these links persist. We like kind of waiting until we can get to January before we doing those tactical breakdowns, because we like to get a little bit more data throughout the course of the season and ensure that those links are indeed very much true. Sabre says, Tom, if you could have any song become an Arsenal chant, what song would it be? I assume this is like, you know, like the Waka Waka song and the Tequila song and turning them into songs for players. Often, it's really hard to do these kind of things off the top of my head. Because my knowledge of kind of music in this sense, I have such a niche music taste. You know, I'm really into drum and bass, as you guys very much know. And outside of that, it's like alternative rock, like Foles and things like this. So coming up with like a tune. I love the fact that Chase the Sun, which of course is a bit of an Ibiza classic, became Martin Odegaard's song, because I do enjoy that. And there is a brand new remix of Chase the Sun out by Coven, which you should definitely check out if you haven't done so already. But coming off, when I was younger, I used to listen to a lot of Madness, believe it or not, the ska band, and I do like ska music. So maybe something, maybe using one of the Madness tunes. It'd be incredible if you could get a night boat to Cairo use of one of the songs, or maybe like obviously One Step Beyond, but that is more, I know One Step Beyond gets associated with Chelsea, I think, a little bit. So maybe avoid that one. But Our House as well. I reckon Our House can be turned into a song for one of the Arsenal players kind of easily as well. So yeah, I think there are options. It Must Be Love, maybe as well, another one. There's lots of ska Madness tunes in particular that I think would be great options. There you go. And Sabro says it's because your music taste in kind of electric and drum and bass that I asked. The thing is that drum and bass songs are not really able to be used in kind of a football charty way. They just don't work. There's been a few remixes of the All I Need Is Your Love Tonight song, but yeah, I don't think that would work. So yeah, Suggs is a Chelsea fan, says Stephen, so it'd never be allowed. I know he is, but that's why I say he gets linked with Chelsea quite a lot, but some of their songs are quite good. So there you go. That was a really fun answer. Thank you. You're very welcome. Femi says, please correct me if I'm wrong. Arsenal and Spurs are on the same points and goals. So how come they sit top of the league? Because Spurs have scored more goals than Arsenal, Femi. So that's why. Legend says, why isn't Emil getting a chance on that left-hand side? Because he's not above Trossard and he's not above Martinelli in the pecking order. It's as simple as that, really. He's not even above Jesus, it seems, if we could use, Jesus and something like that. Oh, this is a big shout from Macri Lasagna. Could use something like Original Nutter. Yeah, Shy FX, Original Nutter. That could be a good one. Can't imagine the Emirates crowd rapping for a significant period, but Original Nutter would be quite fun to do. Certainly, if you've not heard that song, check it out. The Show FX Original Nutter. Anna Simos says, I don't see why fans would want either Phillips or Luiz. We have to realise that the next centre midfielder would be a replacement for Partey, not just depth, which Jorginho is now. We need to sign, we need to aim higher. And I agree. You know, I think that both of Calvin Phillips and Luiz are of a level that we should be looking for kind of the higher higher quality option, which is why I like somebody like Yusuf Fafana, who I think has got a higher ceiling than both those two. As Brett mentioned in the chat box, Kefren Turam and Manu Kone as well, two other players I think have higher ceilings in the end at a top club to develop into than those two. So yeah, certainly I think Arsenal should be aiming higher. Jalali says, how much do we get for Smith Rowe in January? 35 to 40. You know, the issue I have when I answer these questions about how much do I think we're going to get for Smith Rowe is that I inevitably get somebody in my comment section leave a comment like, I don't like, Tom, how you lower the valuation of players. In fact, I think there was a comment like that the other day. Valuation, or maybe the value. If I search the word value, maybe it'll come up. But yeah, here we go. So this comment came in from Adefemi 3299, who says, Tom, I need to say this to you. I feel sad how we as Arsenal fans, especially fan channels and journalists like yourself, who have a voice, consistently devalue our players in the market, all in the name of being logical, which I find a little funny. And yet we are hoping the club can sell big and sell well and improve our finances. But we already operate with a defeatist mentality in the transfer market when it comes to sales. It's easy for us to say we want to buy certain players and agree with some of the prices other clubs put in their assets, but we keep saying we don't see how other teams will want to pay huge amounts for our own highly talented players. How can you say for Smith Rowe, who is regarded as one of the next best things for English midfields, that you don't see any team wanting to pay more than £40 million for him? For a young player who has a high ceiling. Despite his injury record, we will likely go to Wolves and make inquiries to buy Neto, who has a similar injury issues or worse, and we will still have to cough out upwards of 70 million for him, and we will all justify it. We don't encourage that of any team who wants to come for Smith Rowe should start at least from 50 million. Just thought I needed to point this out. We should stop this wrong narrative. You might say it doesn't really matter, but all the opinions add up. Look, Ade, I respect your opinion on this, and I respect your comment. What I would say is that, you know, when you use the line of all in the name of being logical, I do kind of advertise myself as kind of being logical and objective about things we talk about. And I'm not going to, you know, deviate from that path just to try and hype up when I personally don't think that I have any influence on what Arsenal are going to accept. If Arsenal are looking at what I'm saying and then accepting a lower figure because of what I've said, then there's a problem, quite frankly, and they shouldn't be. So I really think that maybe there's too much emphasis on the idea that I or Harry or other comment sections specifically have an influence on how much we accept for players. And I can only give you what I think is my opinion about that. Regarding the comment on Smith Rowe and how much he's worth, 50 million, and the comparisons to Neto, I absolutely understand why some people might think, well, if Neto's going to go for 60 plus million quid or 70 plus million quid, why on earth can't we get Smith Rowe? Especially because Neto has had those injury reputations as well. What I would say is if you look at a number of factors, there is a reason behind that. First of all, Smith Rowe, when he returns from injury, isn't starting for Arsenal. Neto, when he returns from injury for Wolves, is starting not only for Wolves, but he's getting minutes for Portugal on the international level as well, which increases his value. Not only that, but the injury types that Neto has had, which are not persistent, they're like a really niche patella injury, which is not the type that you see, you know, happen again or consistently, and then an ankle injury, which again was kind of linking to just him coming back too soon, and then an associated injury with that, and there's not been an issue so far. Fingers crossed that there won't be. You've also got to consider that he's moving from Wolves, and Wolves have got a very good record when it comes to making good money on the players that they sell. Think about how much they just got for Neves. Think about how much they just got for Mateus Nunes. They do make significant money when they sell players, and that has to come into the thoughts. I'm just having a quick look at Wolves' all transfer to see some of the records of some of the other players they've sold. But when Arsenal sell players, our reputation when it's come to selling has not been particularly great. They sold Nathan Collins to Brentford for more than £20 million. They sold Morgan Gibbs-White for upwards of £25 million. You know, they've sold well when it's come to players. They sold Diogo Jota for upwards of £40 million. You know, so, and that was when was that? When did that even happen? 2020. So it's not as if that they are, bad sellers, and they've sold players for higher amounts of money than Arsenal have ever sold players for, which is really, really important. And then you've got to have the interest. Arsenal are the team coming in for Neto, whereas Smith Rowe, there's rumours and whispers about Newcastle. There was whispers about Chelsea. And to be fair, when those links to Chelsea arose, when they came up, there were suggestions that Arsenal would be looking for a really big fee from Chelsea as well. Aston Villa only offered about £35 million for Smith Rowe, and that was when he was playing regularly and was a really key part of that Arsenal team that got back out of kind of the rut that it found itself in the bottom half of the table under Arteta. And eventually Smith Rowe became part of that side that played trying to compete for the Champions League during the Amazon All or Nothing season. That was the summer before that he got a £35 million bid. So I don't think that necessarily there is an argument for Smith Rowe going for way over £50 million. And I also don't think that it's fair to ask me or other content creators to start saying that because there is some kind of influence that we have on the market. We don't. We don't have an influence on the market. We don't have an influence. Even from a journalistic perspective, if I write an article about how much I think Smith Rowe is going to go for, I personally don't think that influence is significant enough that either a team that's trying to buy Smith Rowe or Arsenal trying to sell Smith Rowe, it would have any kind of impact on it. So I hope that that's kind of covered that, because I know it's not just Ade in the comment section. There's a lot of people that leave comments like that say that I devalue players. I personally, that's my view on it, and I don't think it has any impact on the eventual price tag of those players. I think I'm pretty accurate when it comes to player sales. I remember I told you last summer that I thought that Balogun would go for around £35 million at the start of the window. There was a period where I kind of deviated and thought maybe we'd get closer to 50. I think that was more optimism than anything. But in the end, he went for around £35 million, which I thought is what he would go for. So there you go. I feel like I'm pretty accurate when it comes to assessing potential sale prices of players. Let's go to Simon says, what highly rated central midfielder would you try and sign? I've kind of talked about this. Fofana is the one at Monaco. Barella has been another player that's been talked to me about. Barella, absolutely, I think is a really quality central midfielder. Very expensive, very difficult to get out of Inter Milan as well. But if we could do that, it would be a great signing for Arsenal without a doubt. I'd love to see someone like Barella sign. That'd be a really marquee option for the Gunners to go for, whether or not it's the right move. And obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on in Italian football right now regarding betting. So we'd have to see if whether or not Barella's kind of been caught up in that or not. We don't know. We'll have to wait and see. But certainly, he's a player of real quality, which is absolutely worth having a look to. Mark says, to what do you attribute Chelsea's recent turn in form, and how would you set up the team differently? The opponents that they've played, I think, would probably be it. They've beaten Fulham, who have been dreadful, and I'm really looking back on that Chelsea result at home as kind of a disappointment. And they beat Burnley, and the game before that, they narrowly beat Brighton in the Carabao Cup. They lost at home to Villa. They drew away at Bournemouth. They lost at home to Nottingham Forest. They've only beaten Burnley, who are terrible, and Fulham. So it's not like there is a significant reason behind the teams. I think it's more to do with the opponents. It's going to be a real test for them. Apparently, Reece James could be back. We'll have to wait and see if that is indeed the case and what kind of impact that would have. I saw some Chelsea fans saying no matter who Arsenal start at left wing, they're going to be pocketed by James. Okay. I mean, Martinelli's back. He's had a whole couple of weeks to rest and recover as well. So I'm looking forward to Martinelli coming back. Bizarre says, Tom, do you think Ben White is going to re-sign? Yes. I'm relatively confident that Ben White will indeed sign a brand new contract. There's no indications to suggest that he won't. He's very happy at Arsenal. So there you go. Tyrell says, Tom, they beat Luton at home as well. And they narrowly beat Luton. It wasn't like I know it was 3-0, but it was like they had to really fight for those 3 goals. So there you go. SA says, Tom, can you build a 5-a-side best Emirates era player? It's difficult, isn't it? Because there's times at which players crossed over from the Highbury to the Emirates. Like Thierry Henry played at the Emirates, but his best years were certainly at Highbury. I still think that you have to choose Thierry Henry because he continued onwards into that team. So at striker, still without a doubt, is Thierry Henry. Now, it's how you then form I think it's a best five-a-side team is a goalkeeper, a defender, two midfielders, and a forward. So a goalkeeper from the Emirates era, it's very difficult to look beyond Aaron Ramsdale. I know Petr Cech was here. I know Wojciech Szczesny was here. And I know Raya is currently the number one. But if I'd say who have I been most impressed by of all of the goalkeeping performances of any player during the era at the Emirates, I'd have to say Aaron Ramsdale's performances at the Emirates have been better than any other option. It's almost difficult to not say Robin van Persie as well at striker, because Robin van Persie at Arsenal in the Emirates era scored far more goals than Thierry Henry managed as well. So that's also something you have to consider. So maybe Van Persie. The reason why you don't want to put Van Persie in is because of the obvious ramifications of choosing Van Persie. Into midfield, and I think, it's hard not to say that Thomas Partey and Declan Rice and Ødegaard as those three, very difficult. I mean, Santi Cazorla holds a very special place in my heart as a player. And I'd love to see a combination of Santi Cazorla in his prime and Declan Rice together. That would be brilliant. And Cesc Fabregas as well was playing his best football at Arsenal during the Emirates era. It's so difficult, isn't it? I think because the way that a five-a-side team works, it's not like you have 10. So that kind of Ozil, Ødegaard, and in some ways, I guess, Santi, whereas I think Cesc as a centre mid, even though he played a lot of attacking mid, but as a centre mid as well, was so good. I think it has to be Fabregas. Fabregas probably in there alongside more of a defensive type player. It's going to be either Partey or Rice. And I've enjoyed what I've seen from Declan Rice so much. I think I'm going to go with Rice and Cesc as my two centre mids. And then as a centre half, I'm going William Saliba. I have to go William Saliba. I know that Sol Campbell continued into the Emirates era. I know that we've had others like Laurent Koscielny, for instance, but I just think it has to be Saliba. So I'm going to go Ramsdale, Saliba, Rice, Cesc, and I just can't pick Van Persie. So I'm going to go with Thierry Henry as the striker. So that's my team. That's the group. That's who I'm picking. There you go. There's your TGT five-a-side team. Even though I'm wearing my Santi Cazorla shirt right now. But yeah, for sure. Hussein says, would you start Havertz over Nketiah or up top with Jesus on the right if Saka isn't fit to start? Yes, I would. And says 2 Emirates era players to complete this team would be Fabregas and Van Persie up front. MM says when 3 of the current players are in, we're beginning of the Emirates era was peak. Yeah, for sure. And I think that shows you kind of the level that we've started to reach as well, at Arsenal, is that we've started to reach a level where we are seeing the best Arsenal under, Arteta at Arsenal has been the best that we've expected since the golden era of Arsene Wenger. This is the most competitive we've been since that early to mid 2000s period. This is the most competitive that we have been since then. So it's exciting. It's really exciting. Daniel says a biased pick. Probably Dan, because we're football fans, and ultimately there's always going to be bias associated with this. I wouldn't pick Sanchez because Sanchez for me is a left winger. He's a wide forward, and a wide forward doesn't have a place in a five-a-side team for me. It's centre midfielder, it's a centre forward, and it's a centre half. That's just me. So there you go. You can complain all you like, but that's my team. Everyone's got their opinions. You're entitled to your own. So there you go. Mickey says, although there's talk about signing Arta Vermeeren from Antwerp, what happens to Charlie Patino? It would be a shame to lose him, even though Vermeeren is class. We kind of talked and touched upon Patino yesterday. I don't personally think that there will be a pathway for him. I think that ultimately he will sadly move on in the summer. And that's kind of where we're at. We do have an option of another year on his contract. I think that he has another year left when he returns, but I can't see Arsenal getting a significant fee really for Patino with a year remaining on his deal. So yeah, difficult to see a pathway for Patino. But let's see. Stranger things have happened. Things can change. We'll have to wait and see. Jason says, who has performed the best this season so far between Saliba, Rice, Saka, Gabriel, and Jesus? Rice. I think Rice has been our standout performer this season. I think he's been absolutely unbelievable. So, yeah, Declan Rice, without a doubt, is Arsenal's MVP of the season so far, which I really enjoy because not only did, of course, we really want him, but the amount of times I had people leaving comments over the summer saying Rice is average, Rice isn't any better than Partey. Like, the amount of stick I had to deal with, in the summer regarding the amount of money we were investing in Declan Rice. He's without a doubt our best player this season, without question. He's been awesome. Very closely followed by Saliba as well. That is going to bring us to the end of today's show. Thank you so much, guys, for tuning in. Please do drop a like on the video. Please do subscribe to the channel if you're new. I'll be back tomorrow morning, of course, with another 8 a.m. show. I'll also be back a little bit later on this morning on the Arsenal Way. We're very close. I haven't actually checked the sub count on the Arsenal Way in a little while, but we're very close to hitting 100K. Let's have a quick check what we're on. 98.2. We're less than 2,000 subs away from hitting 100K over there. Amazing work, amazing stuff on the channel. So thank you to everyone that's continued to help support us. We will return, as I say, tomorrow. Have a fantastic Tuesday. Worst day of the week, so always worth trying to get one over on this one. But I hope that you've had a great weekend, start to your weeks, and you've stayed safe and you've stayed well. It is really important that those words ring true through this moment in time. So please, indeed, to the best of your ability, do everything you can to keep you and yours safe and well. And thank you so much for listening. And as always, not even most importantly, there are more important things in the world than this, but thank you. And as always, up the Arsenal.